My colleagues are here, and I think all of our presenters are here as well. So let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So thank you all for joining. My name is Juan Marcano, and I have the honor and pleasure of representing Ward 4 on the Aurora City Council, and also chairing the Transportation, Airports, and Public Works Committee. So I'll now defer to my vice chair to introduce herself.
Thank you. I'm Councilmember Angela Lawson at large, and I am the vice chair of the Transportation Committee.
Fantastic. And our member, Councilmember Medina.
Councilmember Medina, Ward 3. Thank you.
Fantastic. So first up, approval of the July 27th, 2023 meeting minutes. I do not have any changes. Do my colleagues have changes?
No changes for me.
All right, fantastic. So those will stand approved. I see nothing under consent, so I'll move us into general business. So first up, item 4A, the DRCOG 2024 to 2027 Regional Transportation Operations and Technology Set-Aside Applications Update. So this is going to be, I believe, Carly, and yeah, you'll have the floor.
Yes, thank you. That is me. I just attempted to share screens. Did it work? Can you see my screen, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Chair Marcano, members of the TAPS committee. My name is Carly Campuzano. I'm the traffic manager in the Public Works Department, and today I'm going to be presenting on a few recent grant applications that we submitted last month that we're pretty excited about. They are part of the DRCOG Regional Transportation Operations and Technology Set-Aside program. So a little bit similar to the TIP program that we applied for earlier this year and you heard a lot about. But this is a different set-aside program that's more focused on transportation technology projects. So I'll be going through this. And as part of this presentation as well, I'm going to give a little bit more background on some of the different initiatives we've been working on related to communications and fiber, since those also are kind of related to some of these applications. So yeah, I'll just get started. So this is a summary of the 3 applications we submitted last month. One of them is to facilitate the upgrades of our traffic signal communication system. Another one is to create a traffic management center at one of our existing facilities. And then a third application is to upgrade some different traffic signal equipment. So overall, with these 3 projects, our requested federal money was about $2.8 million, and the local match was a little under $700,000 total for these 3. So that's a general summary, and I'll get into more details on each of these 3 and kind of the scope towards the end of this presentation. And so for the bulk of this presentation, I'm actually going to be spending a little bit more time going over some of the background on how our system currently operates and our plans for fiber. Just as it rolls into these, I'm going to go over that first. So this is just a timeline slide of where we're at in the DRCOG grant application review process. So the applications are being scored and reviewed now, and we're hoping to hear back next month. We did submit 3, which was a kind of on the higher end from what other agencies submitted. So we're hoping to get them, but we'll have to see what else is submitted and how they score. So with that, I'm going to spend a little bit of time now going over some background on how our system currently operates and some other initiatives we're working on as far as fiber. So with any technology project, a really important piece is our overall network and our communications. So what I mean by communications is we have a lot of different field devices at traffic signals. So you guys know that we have a lot of traffic signals throughout the whole city. So we have about 400 traffic signals and other devices. And in order to bring back the data from those devices and really be able to use it and to push out updates to our system from a central location, we need to be able to bring that data back. And so that's the communications network I'm referring to. On the traffic signal side, we currently have a wireless network that is comprised of radios. So this little insert picture shows what some of our radios look like. They're the diamond-shaped things you will see on traffic signals. Probably have not noticed. Maybe after this meeting, you'll look up when you're driving around and see some of them. So we have a lot of these throughout the city. And so we currently bring back data to our North Satellite facility, which is near 32nd and Chambers, and we bring it back via radios. So we do have a communications network on the traffic side. It's completely separate from our city network. So it's not something that is managed by IT. We have kind of separate staff that manage the network and position the radios and make upgrades and things like that. So this network has been serving us thus far, but with wireless radios, we are pretty limited on overall bandwidth and the type of data we can bring back. Back in years and probably decades past, the data you'd bring back was a lot smaller. It was maybe just some data from the computer at each intersection, but nowadays we're trying to bring back all sorts of metrics, all sorts of video, and it's just our current system is really maxed out with what it can even handle. And then with radios, we also have some issues where we don't have line of sight. So the radios need to see each other to communicate. And when you get out east and how with the city's expansion, or even in like Ward 6 with different hilly areas, it just becomes really difficult to get that line of sight. So we have some issues of just, we don't have every signal connected to our system, and it's because we really can't for different constraint reasons. So that's kind of how our current system works. And when we're talking about rolling out technology, we really need to fix these things before we just install devices in the field that then we can't communicate to.
Carly, can I jump in real
Oh
quick?
yeah,
and ask
sure. Yep.
So can you flip back? Yeah. So could you define the MC and AFD symbols on this map?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, which signals on this map?
The MC and AFD. So the AFD looks like it is along, that would be Mississippi.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you have good eyes.
That's ILIF. Yeah, that's ILIF, sorry.
That's probably the
Yeah.
fire department, right? And then MC
Yeah, I
would
think
probably be
so.
municipal center, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're
The
right.
south side of the road. So I was like, wait a minute, because I thought Station 7 is in that area, but it's on the north side of ILIF. So okay.
Yeah. And we have so the AMC, so some of the symbols we have shown on here are kind of our city facilities that are important for communications and that we also want to communicate to in the future. And so we did add a layer on a lot of our maps that show city facilities. So up at the north, you'll see North Satellite, which is where our signal equipment is housed and our traffic maintenance staff are. And then you're right, MC is the AMC, which is what we're used to seeing it called, the municipal center. And then we also have Talon's Reach down here, which is where we have a lot of it's another important facility for us. So those are there. Yeah. Oh man, you have really good eyesight. So good catch on that. I have some better looking maps too. The purpose of this one is also to show, like, these red lines show our main radio backhauls through the city. So we kind of operate point to point up here from North Satellite and go all the way down and attempt to get out to other stretches of the city, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Good question. All right. So recognizing all of our current needs and future needs of what we want to be able to use for traffic operations and for other city business as well, we identified the need to look into fiber and really try to bolster our existing system by installing, or at least having a certain amount of projects that rely on fiber instead of radios for our critical connections. The Public Works Department, in close collaboration with IT and Water, kicked off a fiber master plan project in 2021. And so we all kind of pooled resources together to create this plan, which was really intended to be citywide. So not just the traffic side, but really something that'll meet the needs of all city groups too. And so we've been working closely with a consultant on a fiber master plan. And so part of that has been working together to define all of our existing conditions, what devices and what needs do we all have currently, what are our future plans, what should a future network look like, and then how does that get deployed, like breaking it into kind of smaller pieces along with some costs and relative priority to each different city group to see where our resources could best be spent, given that our resources always tend to be more limited than our needs are. So this is just kind of a primer on this fiber master plan stuff related to these grant applications, but we're also planning to do a separate fiber master plan presentation to TAPS and probably full council as well later this year. So definitely will bring a lot more detail, but I have a couple more slides on more fiber detail, and feel free to ask questions too. So this is another map that a lot of really small symbols on this one too. So basically, our consulting team, we had a lot of different meetings with different city departments, and laid out like where we currently need more bandwidth and laid that out across different groups. And one of the deliverables is a map, a GIS map that was developed that shows different proposed areas where we would really benefit from fiber. Also having loops for redundancy so that if we lose a few strands or if there's an issue in one area, there's still a path the data can take to get back, which on the traffic side, we don't have that with our radios right now. So if one radio goes down, we'll drop 50 signals off of our network for a bit until it's fixed, which it's easier to go reposition a radio though than to resplice fiber. So I know that sounds dramatic, but we normally get it back up and running relatively quickly. So we had internal meetings, and then another thing we did was we had some external meetings with different agency stakeholders, which I thought were really helpful because there are other agencies that already have fiber in the ground and they have extra fiber with ability to potentially share or lease those strands to other public agencies. And so those are the types of items we looked at and use that to develop really just a fiber master plan that we can use going forward. One thing I do want to note is a high priority segment for us is connecting these different city facilities. So you see North Satellite at the top, the municipal center. IT had a strong need to also connect over to Talon's Reach as well. So this kind of line I highlighted in red is one of our high priority locations. And then another thing I want to note is that building out this whole network is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be very, very costly, probably will need to consider a lot of different ways we can get this done, different types of funding, different types of partnership. So to overall build out the network, we estimate that would cost about $80 million. So just looking at that cost alone feels big, but we're trying to see what smaller chunks we can break that into. And the implementation is probably going to be very based on what opportunities come up and what funding's available. And we do have some amount of initial funding that can be used for match money, like for these applications in our city budget that we've already been setting aside. So those are a few different things to note. So one project I want to explain a little more because it directly relates to one of our grant applications and we're very excited about it. In some of our agency meetings, we identified a potential sharing opportunity with CDOT, with the Colorado Department of Transportation. They already have fiber along I-225, I-70, and a little bit, and some on Colfax, which is what this green line represents on this map. And so through this process, we identified that they would be open to having an agreement with us that we could use some of their strands for traffic and IT purposes. And so we have drafted a proposal to them, which they voted on and approved a couple months ago. So they're agreeing to allow the city to use 8 strands of fiber along these runs. And I think that'll be just hugely helpful for our overall networks and will be a really good first step to start getting some fiber active with a really low cost impact to the city, which is also important. So just wanted to mention that. Oh man, I made this fly in and then I forgot. So sorry, let me click through it. Okay, I guess I got fancy a few weeks ago. I'm sorry, surprised me. So just a graphic on really showing how a little bit of how fiber works. So we have all these different field devices on the traffic side. ITS devices, intelligent transportation system devices. We have cameras. We are trying to collect different performance measures. We're looking at like future opportunities for adaptive signals we've talked about. And so it just, all this data is what we need to gather up and take back to a central location that our staff can use. And then the city facilities are really important as well to connect. And this will help us improve our reliability and then our just capacity to handle this amount of data as well. And so with that, I have just a few more slides that actually get into what the topic is, and that's these applications. But we felt like that background information was important to lead into this. So our first application is a communications infrastructure upgrade. And this application was really aimed at doing some of the connection work needed to tap into that CDOT fiber backbone. We're also working on a formal agreement with CDOT that'll come to you in the form of an IGA that'll be presented a few months down the line once we're further along in that process. But this application looked at all of the different fiber that CDOT is willing to essentially lease to us and will provide the connections so that we need to do on the design and construction side in order to tie our signals and some facilities into that fiber. So that is one application. Doing this would allow us to connect 12 traffic signals, and they're traffic signals at our ramps, which are really ones that are pretty tough to accommodate, that would be really good, that would really have a strong benefit, I guess, to connect. And then 2 city facilities as well. And then the next grant application we submitted is for equipment for a traffic management center or a TMC. So we're working on a TMC study right now to kind of lay out how we can best utilize some of our space at our existing North Satellite facility, which is really kind of functioning as our TMC right now. It's where all of our traffic signal maintenance staff are. It's where we're bringing back data currently. It's just not set up to be super user friendly from a data perspective. So we're looking right now at laying out how we can align that to be more of a standard TMC. And this picture is from a Douglas County traffic management center. You see the different screens and terminals, and all the data comes back to a central place that our staff can use. So this grant, if we're successful with it, would pay for a lot of the hardware needed for the TMC. And then the last grant application we submitted is to purchase some different hardware equipment. So it would purchase 42 detection units, and our newer detection units have a lot of advanced capabilities. They don't just detect cars, they can detect bicycles in the road, and they have different abilities to collect and count pedestrians and different levels of truck traffic as well. And we bring those metrics back, and we also have a dashboard where we can see the signal timing and the activations real time. So this would fund 42 of those units. We have 80 currently deployed. So it would help us get to almost having about, I don't know, maybe a third of our system covered. And it would also fund power supplies. So we don't have an extra power supply at every signal. So if our power goes out, a signal might go dark. And this would fund the backup power supply that we need for an extra 42 signals as well. So that's the last grant application we submitted. And so yeah, hopefully we hear good news next month. This was informational, so happy to answer any questions, but don't need a formal action on this item.
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation, Carly. I'll defer to my colleagues first, see if they have any questions. Councilmember Lawson.
Yes, thank you, Carly, for the presentation. Sorry, I missed out on a couple slides. A question for you, does the information that you provide with the 80 million and then everything that you talked about in the slide, does it look at the future growth of the city, in case we may get, as we're building out, maybe we might get another police station, or maybe we might get a police data center or something like that. Is this looking at the projections of how the city is growing and the needs that we're going to probably have, or just kind of what we have right now and maybe a 5-year or 10-year type of time?
That's a really good question. I didn't really address that in this presentation, but that's a great question. So we do have a portion of our fiber master plan that also we have extra maps that I didn't show that address the area that's growing of the city. So definitely out east. But another thing I want to mention is that since we've recognized this need, we did, I think, update our last, I feel like it's in the roadway manual. It might be a different standard, but we updated one of our design standards so that now when a developer comes in, if they're building or widening a new arterial, we're having them put in conduit proactively. So we're hoping to not have to spend as much money retrofitting the east part of the city. We actually might have really good connections out east before some of the core of the city, surprisingly. So like with I-70 Piccadilly, we're putting fiber in that bridge, for example. So yeah, so we might end up being pretty well connected out east, but that is something that we're accounting for. So
okay, but the core, so that's good to know. I'm glad to know about, especially for the growth part. I guess because of the older part of the city, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to make that happen. And that's a little bit concerning, but I understand because it's older infrastructure. But I'm hoping that we really examine that and the challenges that's going to come with that, to make sure that everything is kind of at least somewhat leveled playing field for everyone in the city.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. And
Okay.
that's why we're looking at teaming opportunities with other agencies too as a first step, because it's going to be way faster and cheaper to be able to team with somebody else who already has conduit versus boring brand new conduit. So that's why the CDOT opportunity was just really appealing for us, and pretty excited about that throughout the core of the city.
All right. Is that all from you, Councilmember Lawson? All right, thank you. Councilmember Medina?
Nothing for me, but thank you for the presentation.
All right. So thank you for the presentation, Carly. I do have a couple of questions. So with regards to the rollout of our overall network, so you mentioned $80 million is the estimated price tag. And I wanted to know, like, this is eligible for federal grant funding, right, with the broadband monies that they recently approved?
That's a good question. I know that maybe some other folks are tracking that funding a little closer than I am. I don't know. I guess first, Cindy, do you have more info on the broadband specific funding?
I don't. I think we'll need to reach out to Scott Newman to see what those parameters are around the broadband. I believe he and Liz Rogers have been tracking that, but we can definitely check in with them.
And
Okay.
I've talked to him a bit initially, and a lot of the opportunities seem to be also for areas that are less developed. So I've talked through some opportunities with him, but I don't think I've seen anything yet that would cover what we're trying to accomplish with this specifically, but they're keeping a close eye on it. So we'll continue to look for those opportunities.
All right, I appreciate that. So obviously any help we can get would be welcome. It's a pretty
Yeah.
steep price tag. And the purpose of the backbone, you know, in addition to connecting city facilities and infrastructure, as we were just talking about, we're still looking at potentially using that to then lease broadband, either access to other providers or to maybe explore municipal broadband in the future, correct? So as
I
we're,
know that's something that Scott's looking at as well. And when we present on the master plan and get more specific about fiber, I'll definitely have Scott and Josh on his team there to provide answers on more of that end. But that's my understanding. But from the traffic perspective, we really want to first connect our, install fiber to meet our own needs. And I just don't think we're quite at the point where we're able to lease out anything yet. But I think that is kind of what they took into account as well when we were trying to estimate in the fiber master plan process, like how many strands we would need. We definitely tried to way overestimate to give us the ability to, do essentially what other agencies do and lease out strands. So that's definitely a consideration. Yeah.
okay, good. That was actually my third question for you was when we're going to lay that stuff, are we doing enough for now, or are we like really,
Oh,
future-facing stuff?
we did for the future, and then we added extra. I think the main cost is boring the conduit. The actual fiber strands in the conduit, it's not the biggest cost. So we are trying to make sure we for sure have way more than enough for the future because with all the different technology projects that come up, we want to be a lot more future proof if we're putting this amount of investment in. So yeah.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation.
No problem.
All righty. So next up is item 4B. It's a resolution to approve the form of agreement for snow removal and plowing operations on local streets. And I think, Lynn, you're up for this one. So you've got the floor.
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Bergen.
yeah, I'm
sorry. Did you have any questions? I am so sorry. I didn't see you on my little thing because the presentation was up.
No, well, can I real quickly ask?
Yes, please, please.
Just, with the fact that Aurora is split with Centennial dividing some of our ward and unincorporated Arapahoe County, we do get a lot of constituents that get upset about the timing of signals and then having to explain that we're having to communicate with other jurisdictions. So with that traffic, the TMC, basically, if we were able to get that done, it would help facilitate all that.
Yeah, I think having the TMC would definitely help our communication with other agencies, but we're really limited on our communications infrastructure more related to fiber and radios and things like that, because the way our system works is it goes from our North Satellite facility and spreads out throughout the city. So we're not super well connected with bandwidth in Ward 6. But as part of our fiber master plan, we did meet with Centennial and Arapahoe County. And Centennial is actually relatively well connected. So there might be some future opportunities to work with them as well. And then Scott and I are actually on I think Scott and IT are on a monthly coordination meeting with Centennial, I think Greenwood Village and Arapahoe County about all this stuff too. So we're trying to communicate together as well as we can. But yeah, communication is kind of at the heart of some of our issues with signal timing. So I think both of these projects will really help us to address that.
Thank you. Do you want me to kind of just start off with the snow plan? Or
yeah, so with the next item, Councilmember Bergen, if you'd like to introduce it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is a situation that has come up years ago with a lot of the different metro districts, and I certainly have a lot of metro districts in Southeast Aurora, and really concerns about the city not being able to plow residential roads. And so one of the thoughts a few years ago was, what if we allowed homeowner associations and metro districts to do snow plowing? With that question, Lynn has had to do a lot of research, and she's going to do a presentation, but just in terms of, how to make that program stand up, protecting the city from liability and so forth. And we did have Blackstone Metro District that was kind of be a pilot program last year, but they really never initiated the contracted snow plows. I don't know if we just didn't have a lot of snow or what that reason was, but anyway, just there is interest. And so I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Right. Thank you, Council Member Bergen and Chair Marcano and the rest of the committee. I'm Lynn Fenner. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works in charge of operations. And can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry. Something is distracting me. Let me get rid of it. Thank you. I'm here to talk to you today about a proposal to allow special districts and established HOAs to remove snow from residential streets within their district boundaries. This is something we've been working on with Councilmember Bergen for the last year. And so I'm just going to give you a little a proposal, just update you on the proposal and where we're at with that. My agenda for the presentation is to go a little bit into the snow plan. It'll be a high-level overview. Then we'll talk a little bit about residential snow plowing and some of the strategies and considerations we looked at, and then our proposed next steps. So as everyone on this committee knows, because you've seen it many, many times, particularly you, Council Member Chair Marcano, sorry. The city snow plan is really geared to make sure that our public safety operations are able to be functional at all times during the snow event. To do that, we provide snow removal equipment and staffing levels based on our most common types of winter storms. And right now we have more than 90 pieces of snow removal equipment to be able to do that. Our plan focuses on our arterial and collector network. We also have priorities for a secondary and residential through streets and streets for our rural and outlying streets, planned for our rural and outlying streets. We also use materials, including a liquid anti-icer and a granular de-icer that will help us to keep the streets clear for our public safety needs. Our snow plan outlines 4 priority routes as well as 4 storm categories. Our priority 1 routes, as I've mentioned, are our arterial roadways, and those on our maps are designated in red. Our priority 2 routes are designated as blue, and those are mostly our collector roads and some roads that serve schools and hospitals. Our priority 3 routes are depicted as green, and these are the neighborhood collector streets. So these are streets that will connect through a neighborhood to an arterial or collector street. And then finally, our priority 4 streets are shown in yellow on our maps. And these tend to be the main north-south, east-west connectors out in the east area. We've also established 4 storm categories based loosely on the amount of snowfall that we get. Less than 2 inches, we call a category 1. 2 to 6 inches of snow, we call category 2. Category 3 storms are between 6 and 12 inches, and anything over 12 inches is a category 4 storm. I've also included on here counts of storms per category since 1994, and then the average number of storms we get in each category per season. So as you will see, most of our snowstorms are category 2 or category 1. In fact, they make up almost 90% historically of our snowstorms. This is a sample map, and as you'll see, our arterial streets, Alameda, Chambers, Sable, etc., are red. And then the collector streets, Kalispell Way, and Kentucky Avenue here are blue. And it even shows Collector Street, or I'm sorry, a blue route next to a school there at Richfield and Ohio. And then the green routes on here are those priority 3 residential streets that are connectors between arterials or collector streets. I have also included a chart showing the lane miles we have of each category of roadway. Our total lane miles in our prioritized network is a little over 1,500. And I have to apologize, in your packet, it shows 2021, 2022 storm data. In 2022, 2023, we spent a little less, about $1.3 million total for the season, which came to about $3.39. I'm sorry, $3.39 per resident. We had about half the number of storms, although some of them were pretty intense because it got really, really cold on us. So just in summary, our snow plan is designed to maintain access for our emergency and public safety operations, and it's geared towards our primary roadways. During an event, our plows will be deployed to those red routes, those arterial routes, until the end of snowfall or until those routes are sustained, emergency access for those routes is sustained. When that happens, we will add routes, deploy to other routes in their priority order. We're pretty fortunate in that we are staffed for the category 1 and 2 storms, where we can usually get all of the red and blue routes in a shift. For the category 4 snow events, our plan includes the option to deploy contracted snowplow services to assist on our priority routes. And even beyond that, our plan allows us to deploy contracted plow services for residential streets if needed. The only time we've done that is the 2006-2007 snowstorm, where we got like 3 feet of snow. And then we actually deployed contracted snowplow services during the snow to help us keep up in the residential neighborhoods. In general, however, our residential streets are not prioritized for snow plowing. So as Councilmember Bergen mentioned, we've had a lot of requests to do residential snow plowing, and so we looked at beginning back in 2019 with the bomb cyclone. We started looking at ways that we could perhaps offer an opportunity to have our public residential streets plowed, and we looked specifically at special districts and established HOAs. We developed a pilot program with the High Plains Metro District, which serves the Blackstone neighborhood. That agreement was approved in January of 2021 and expired in June of 2022. This past winter was sort of I can't say unprecedented, but it's been 30 years since we've had the extreme cold, and for as long as we did have it this last year. So this last year was a little unprecedented for us, but we learned a lot from it. So one of the things that we wanted to really pursue then was this idea of having an option for the special districts and the HOAs to plow the streets within their boundaries. So what we've done is we've developed a snow and ice control plan template. We actually have a draft, and we have this IGA that is a template IGA that would allow special districts to plow snow on the residential streets within their boundaries. So our proposal would be open to special districts, which would include metro districts, MBIDs, and established HOAs. We're looking at potentially, if we're all approved, implementing this program in October of 2023, with our first IGAs going to council in November. The IGAs right now, as it's set up, can be executed for periods of 1 to 5 years in duration. And we're proposing that the IGAs be approved in a single regular council meeting. You know, normally the IGAs go through policy committee, then study session, and then to revisit City Council. What we're proposing is if the template is used and there aren't significant changes, that we bring these IGAs straight to the floor and approve them in a single council meeting without the reconsideration period. Doing this eliminates approximately 2 months of process, which is one of the concerns we had when we were going through our pilot program, was how long it took us to actually get an executed IGA. Very similar to our pilot program, the district or HOA will be required to develop and provide a snow removal plan and procedures for our review. They'll be required to use specific equipment and get approval for any materials that they're going to be using. They need to provide services at least at the same level as the city would provide if we were plowing the street. They're required throughout the season to submit monthly season-to-date reports. They're required to carry insurance with the city, listed as additional assured, and be responsible to repair any damage to our public assets that are caused by their operations. And lastly, they're required to submit a post-season report that includes all the details of each of their deployments. So our proposed next steps, if you all approve today, we will take this resolution to the next study session, which is in early September, then to regular session of council in late September with the request for waiver of reconsideration. After we get a read on this at the study session, if we are approved to move forward, we will begin our engagement with the districts and the HOA. So we're expecting that to begin in the middle of September. Throughout October, we'll negotiate with the HOAs and the special districts and give them an opportunity to execute the agreement, and then we will be bringing IGAs to full council in November. With that, I think that's the end. I'm here to answer any questions, and then our question for the committee is, does the committee support moving the proposed resolution to the next study session? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation, Lynn. So I'll go ahead and defer to Councilmember Lawson first.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn, for the presentation, and I definitely, approve moving this forward to the next study session. Just a couple questions. So I guess the one thing the first question I have is, how is the communication going to go out to the city to for the established HOAs? And part B to that is, you said for established HOAs, we have new developments that also have HOAs. Are they just not going to be able to be included in that? Or is it just, I'm just trying to understand established versus we have new development that also has HOAs as well.
Well, the first part of your question about what the communication is going to be, we're going to start off by email. We have a list of HOAs and metro districts that are already interested, but we're also going to be working with Michelle Gardner in our city attorney's office to reach out to additional districts. As far as the other question you had about established, I use the word established to distinguish between a HOA that has a charter and is a legal entity versus they have there are some out there that are like neighborhood groups that they call themselves an HOA, but they're not necessarily an HOA. So the intent was to identify groups that can enter into legally binding contracts.
Okay, thank you. I
So,
just wanted to know what that actually meant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all the
Sure.
questions I have, Councilmember Marcano.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Lawson. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. My question is just, they're gonna plow the streets around the HOA? Just so I make sure it's clear.
They would be allowed to plow the residential streets within their boundaries. So
Okay.
all the streets that are contained within the boundaries, except for those that we would already plow. If there's an arterial in there, we would do it. If there's a collector in there, we would do it, and they would not do it. But all the other residential streets, they would do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Medina. And yeah, I don't have any new questions that haven't already been asked. I'll just say that I know that we had a pilot and it was mentioned in the backup. And I don't think anyone actually ever utilized it, but I don't think there's any harm in having that agreement available for interested HOAs and metro districts. So I support this moving forward as well. Councilmember Bergen, did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Lynn and her staff, because the former one with High Plains was very complicated and it did take a long time, and they worked really hard to simplify the process, but yet make sure that we're protecting the city. And I honestly, even though we had so much interest from these different special districts, we'll see, proof in the pudding if they really want to put out the money to do their own plowing.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and I do appreciate staff's efforts to cut the red tape in the process here as well. Actually, no, now that I said that though, I do have one question for y'all. And that is with the district's plans, because they're all required to create a snow plan. How are we going to, or I guess rather, I would like us to incorporate a way to like show that publicly, and actually maybe this is getting like a little far afield of the specific conversation, because our resident or our existing snow routes, it's all done in a big PDF deck. And I would really love to see like this added to our city's GIS as well, since we have such a great GIS system already. I think just for ease of use, and then incorporating the metro districts into that too, which I hope wouldn't be that big of a task.
No, I
Just
don't
want
think
to
it
ask
will
for a
be.
GIS team.
And I've made a note, so when we start getting them rolling in, we'll try to get them added to a live map or something out on the webpage for sure.
All right, great. Well, thank y'all so much.
And Councilmember,
Yes, ma'am.
if you don't mind, if I leave your meeting, I have another one that I need to attend to, but I appreciate your time.
Oh, please, it's all good. Thank you so much for presenting on your item.
Thank you.
Bye. Alrighty, so with that, we'll move into miscellaneous matters for consideration. I believe, Cindy, you have an item?
Yes, and we actually have two, one from me and then one also from planning, but I will start. This is about what we're calling the East Colfax extension for bus rapid transit. As all of you know, Denver's currently working with the city also on the portion to the west of 225. This area has been identified, the area east of 225 to E470 has been identified through Dr. Cog's regional BRT partnership as a high priority category. So Dr. Cog and CDOT, and this is also in CDOT's 10-year plan. So we've been meeting with Dr. Cog and CDOT over the past few months to talk about the potential for a corridor study for this area for BRT on Colfax from 225 to E470. There is an opportunity for a corridor planning set-aside funding. And the distinct difference with this project is that Dr. Cog is actually going to lead the project. They will manage it. They'll manage the study, the procurement, and serve as the project manager. And then the city will be project partners with them throughout the process. So they have requested a letter of support so that they can apply for the corridor planning set aside. And our wonderful planning department, specifically Mac Hulang and Tom, have all prepared a really thorough letter. It's actually more of a report when you look at all the questions that are being asked for the funding options. And so that is actually been submitted today. And we just wanted to give the committee an update that that was in process, and you'll see more to come.
All right, so thank you for that brief overview. So the question today is if we would support you all putting out a letter of support for this.
Yes, we hope you support because we did.
Yes, no, I absolutely support that. I think that's really exciting to hear, and I'm glad that we're looking 10 years out into the future and understand there's going to be a lot of growth on East Colfax out here as well. So I think it's very exciting. Councilmember Lawson?
I support. I have no other questions.
All right. Sure, Medina?
I support as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. And your second item?
I think Mindy, did you have the second item? Okay, yes, Mindy.
Sure. We just wanted to know very quickly, DOLA had released a grant to support affordable housing, but through infrastructure. So we had a prime candidate, 13th Avenue Station. I don't know. We've been working with Bach Homes. They did a rezone to get it ready so that it can be developed for housing. And RTD owned the property to the north. And the problem was that we didn't have a bridge connecting the two properties and providing the required second point of access for both projects. So we've been the developer, Bach Homes, is ready to start moving. They're going to design the bridge. They're going to actually upfront the cost, but we've been working with our urban renewal team, and now we're looking for grants to supplement the cost of that bridge. So
Okay.
we submitted an LOI real quick last week because it was within a week. They're going to call us this week and see about meeting us and seeing if and when we can move forward with the grant application. So we just wanted to let you know about it.
Okay. So this is over Tollgate Creek then, connecting to
Yes.
the 13th station. And I guess the property that is in question here is the larger chunk, kind of to the north of the Cresco Restaurant Supply.
Yeah, that would be the first phase for housing, and then the RTD property itself. We've been working with
That's to the south of the
RTD
existing
to
park.
try to get, next to the mobile home park, to
Okay.
try to get that as affordable housing.
That's exciting.
Yes.
That sounds great.
Yes, and RTD is supportive. They gave us a letter of support.
Okay, good. Any comments or questions from my colleagues?
None for me. I do have a question. Are you going to have to get other support letters as well? I know you got one from RTD, but what else will help with this?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
in terms of support letters
yeah.
from different agencies, et cetera.
yeah, we'll go after all, once they give us the go ahead to apply for the grant, we're going to go after letters, and we probably
Okay.
will lean out to anybody that you know to help us
Okay.
with those letters. Yeah, so
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Councilor Medina?
I'm all good. Glad to see that we're reaching out and trying to get more housing.
Yes, likewise. All right, and then I actually had an item for miscellaneous, and that kind of goes back to the fiber conversation we had earlier, specifically around micro trenching. I know that we have that conversation coming up in October at TAPS, and I guess I'd like to know a little more about how we set our existing standard operating procedures, and why we specifically chose to prohibit micro trenching in our SOPs. And do we have a waiver process or anything like that?
So this is Cindy, Public Works Director. We have had experience looking at microtrenching in some other areas, couple issues there. I can bring some pictures when we have the next meeting and present on this. It causes significant damage to the residential roadways. They don't go to a very deep depth. And they're also, in speaking with Aurora Water, there have been areas where when they've put it in, they've actually gone through some of the utility infrastructure in the area. So the damage to the pavement and also the utility concerns have been the basis for our decision on that.
I appreciate that. And then just for clarification, the SOPs are set entirely internally, right?
Developed and set internally, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Just wanted to know. Alrighty, thank you. So I look forward to the larger, to the more in-depth conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, appreciate y'all. Okay. Do any of my colleagues have any other miscellaneous matters? All right, seeing none. What do we got on the table for next month? I assume it probably hasn't changed much from the email that I got earlier in the week.
No, it's almost identical, I think, with the exception of one item. So we actually have 5 items coming up for September, so it'll be a busy agenda. We have the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Construction IGA. So Carly will be presenting that item. And then we also have the Arapahoe County Transit and Micromobility Study IGA that Tom will be bringing to the committee in September. So that was one that was actually on today's agenda until it needed to be pushed back to September. So that's the one difference from the email that you received. And the other 3 items for September, the bike lanes and how we are striping those with overlay projects. We're going to talk about local street cross sections, our standards as well. And then the last item for September is going to be the 2023-2024 snow and ice plan. So Lynn will be back next month to give an overview of that.
All right, fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. All right, thank you all so much for your time today. And just want to confirm we are set for, gosh, where did they go? September 28th at 1 p.m., right? All right, I see Councilmember Lawson and Medina have nodded. All righty, great. So I will see you all for this committee at 1 p.m. on the 28th. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a great rest of y'all's day and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Thank you.